Hey everyone, welcome back. If you're getting ready for the UPSC exams, you've got to be on top of those demographic trends.
Oh, absolutely. It's not just about the exam, though.
Right. It's about understanding where India's headed.
Exactly. It's about the future, and we're diving into all that today with this recent article from The Hindu.
It's all about a pretty major shift that's happening right now.
India's declining fertility rate.
Huge topic for the UPSC.
Oh, for sure. It's bound to pop up in both the prelims and the mains.
I bet. So, the Hindu article, they highlighted this really dramatic statistic.
Oh, yeah.
Back in the 1950s, the average woman in India was expected to have over 6 children.
Wow.
Can you imagine?
Big families.
Now, though, the total fertility rate, that's the TFR,
Right.
it's dropped to just 1.9.
Huh. That's even below the replacement level.
Yeah, 2.1. That's what you need to keep the population stable.
Makes you think.
It does.
Ah.
And the thing is, this trend isn't just happening in India.
You see it in a lot of developed countries.
Yeah, but understanding the why behind India's decline, that's what's key.
Especially for those aspiring civil servants.
Exactly. So let's get into it. The Hindu article points to some big social changes that are fueling this trend.
Absolutely. One of the biggest has got to be the increasing empowerment of women.
Right.
Higher education, more women in the workforce, all that's leading to later marriages.
And a shift in priorities, I'd imagine.
Sure.
It's like a domino effect in a way.
How so?
Well, you get more education, then you have more opportunities,
Mm-hmm.
and then all that impacts how many kids people decide to have.
Exactly. It all ties together. Another big factor is just changing social norms,
Yeah, the idea of having a huge family, it's not as appealing as it used to be,
especially in cities.
right? The Hindu article talked about that too. The cost of living, it's through the roof.
Yeah. Raising a big family, it's a massive financial commitment these days.
People are thinking twice about that for sure.
There are a couple other things at play that we don't always talk about.
Yeah.
Infertility and migration.
Oh, right. They can definitely influence the overall fertility rates.
They do.
It's fascinating how all these different pieces come together
It's a complex picture.
and create this huge demographic shift. But as the article pointed out, this change isn't happening everywhere in India at the same pace.
Right. It varies quite a bit.
Southern states, like Kerala, they actually hit that replacement level fertility way before the rest of the country.
Kerala is an interesting case study.
It really is.
They hit that level way back in the late 20th century,
Really.
and now they're dealing with an aging population.
And a shrinking workforce.
Exactly. It's like a glimpse into the future for the rest of India.
I see what you mean.
Yeah.
So what's happening in Kerala now could happen everywhere else in a few decades.
Precisely, which is why understanding both the good and the bad of their situation can be so valuable.
Especially for policymakers.
Right. For anyone who wants to be on top of these trends.
And for those UPSC aspirants, too.
Oh, absolutely. It's all connected.
Speaking of Kerala, the Hindu article mentioned that even though their workforce is shrinking, they're actually attracting workers from other parts of India.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so that kind of helps offset some of the economic challenges, right?
It does. Migration within India adds another layer to this whole demographic puzzle.
For sure. And it highlights why policymakers need to think about solutions that work not just on a national level.
But on a regional level, too.
It's like every single piece of this puzzle affects all the other pieces.
It's all interconnected.
The Hindu article also brought up this interesting point about delayed motherhood in Kerala.
What about it?
More women are choosing to focus on their careers first, which is great for their empowerment.
Definitely.
But it can lead to health challenges down the road.
Absolutely. It's a trade-off, and it really underscores the importance of good healthcare.
And access to family planning resources?
Right. All of that plays a role. It's interesting because this whole declining fertility thing, it's not just happening in India.
Right. It's a global trend.
It is. And the Hindu article touched on how some other countries are dealing with it.
Yeah, like South Korea.
They're really struggling to boost their fertility rate.
Even with all those policies they put in place.
All those incentives and subsidies, it's not enough.
So it's not as simple as just paying people to have more kids.
Nope. There are deeper issues going on.
Like what?
Well, think about it. Their work culture is intense. Housing costs are insane.
Yeah.
There's all this societal pressure, too.
So all that adds up to people deciding to have fewer kids or no kids at all.
Exactly. And South Korea shows us that you have to address the root causes.
And this is where things get interesting for our UPSC aspirants.
How so?
Well, it's not just about knowing that the demographic shift is happening.
Right.
It's about understanding why it's happening.
And how India can deal with it.
Exactly. So how can India navigate all this?
Well, South Korea shows us some things not to do, but there are other countries out there trying some innovative stuff.
Oh, really? Like what?
Well, some Scandinavian countries have amazing parental leave policies.
Oh, yeah, I've heard about that.
Both parents get tons of time off.
To bond with the baby.
And to figure out that whole work-life balance thing,
That makes a lot of sense, especially in those early years.
totally. And then there are countries that are experimenting with affordable housing.
Specifically for young families.
Exactly. Because let's be real, housing is crazy expensive.
It's a huge barrier for couples who want to start a family.
I think there's a theme emerging here.
What's that?
It's all about making young people feel supported.
Giving them the resources to actually raise a family.
Exactly. Some countries are even trying out a 4-day work week.
Whoa, really?
It's all about reducing stress and improving work-life balance.
I can see how that would make a difference.
It's about thinking outside the box and challenging those old ways of doing things.
So you're saying India has an opportunity here?
A huge one. They can learn from these global examples and figure out what works best for them.
And maybe even become a leader in this whole managing demographic change thing.
Exactly.
So it's not just about solving problems, it's about being innovative.
And who better to lead the charge than the future policymakers?
Our UPSC aspirants.
They're the ones who'll be shaping India's future.
Okay, I'm feeling inspired. So what are some key takeaways from all this that our listeners should keep in mind for the UPSC exam?
Well, first off, you got to understand just how complex this demographic shift really is.
It's not just about declining fertility.
Nope. It has ripple effects everywhere.
Economics, social issues, politics.
Even culture.
So it's all about seeing the big picture.
And being able to explain those connections clearly.
Because the UPSC exam, it's not just about memorizing facts.
It's about showing that you can think critically.
Analyze different viewpoints, make strong arguments.
Well, like a true civil servant.
Which is why this deep dive is so valuable.
It's about giving you the tools to think for yourself.
So we've talked about the global context, the need for critical thinking, and even some cool solutions from other countries.
But there's still one big question hanging out there.
How does India move forward?
That's the million-dollar question.
And that's what we'll be tackling in our final part.
We'll be exploring those potential policy interventions.
Thinking about their impact.
And discussing how India can turn this whole thing into a positive.
It's all about turning challenges into opportunities.
So stick with us for the final part of our deep dive into India's demographic shift.
Okay, so we're back and ready to wrap up our deep dive into India's demographic shift.
It's time to get down to brass tacks and figure out what India can do.
We've talked about the causes, the global context, those challenges.
And even some interesting solutions from other places.
But now let's put on our policymaking hats and answer that big question.
What's the way forward for India?
Exactly. What can India do to deal with this whole demographic shift?
It's a tough one, that's for sure.
But the Hindu article gave us some good ideas to think about.
It did.
So we know that a shrinking workforce and an aging population are big concerns.
Ew, the biggest.
How can India keep that economic growth going strong with those trends happening?
Well, boosting productivity is a good place to start.
How so?
If we can give our workforce the skills and tech they need, we can do more, even with fewer workers.
Right. It's about working smarter, not harder.
Exactly. Think automation, upskilling, all that good stuff.
And what about our senior citizens?
Oh, they're a huge asset. We can't forget about them.
But they're not always seen that way, are they?
No, but they have so much experience and knowledge to share.
So how do we tap into that?
Things like phased retirement or mentoring programs could be really effective.
It's about changing the narrative, right?
Seeing our seniors as a resource, not a burden.
And economically speaking, we have to address that Social Security question.
Oh, that's a big one.
Can India's current system handle a rapidly aging population?
It was designed for a different demographic reality.
So some serious long-term planning is needed.
Maybe even some restructuring.
It's a lot to consider.
It is. And these are exactly the kinds of issues that the UPSC loves to ask about.
It's not just about identifying the problems.
It's about analyzing them from every angle.
And coming up with solutions that actually work.
Like a true policymaker.
And we can't forget about the social side of all this.
What do you mean?
Well, family structures are changing. The need for elder care is growing.
Oh, right. And there's potential for conflict between generations.
If things aren't handled carefully.
We need to think about strengthening those social safety nets.
Investing in healthcare that everyone can afford.
And creating a system that works for everyone no matter their age.
It's about building a society where everyone feels supported and valued.
Absolutely.
And education is a big part of that too, right?
Huge. We have to make sure future generations have the skills they need.
to deal with a world that's changing so fast.
Investing in quality education, promoting those STEM fields, fostering critical thinking, it's all important.
We need to prepare young people for jobs that don't even exist yet.
It's a big challenge.
It is, but it's also an incredible opportunity for India.
How so?
India could become a leader in managing this demographic change.
Showing the world how it's done.
So it's not just about fixing the negatives.
It's about creating a better future.
A future that's balanced and sustainable, where everyone can contribute.
Exactly.
And that's what we hope you take away from this deep dive.
You, our listeners, you have the power to shape that future.
To create policies that make a real difference.
And don't forget, this whole deep dive was inspired by that great article in The Hindu.
Make sure you check it out for more insights on this crucial topic.
It's a must-read for any serious UPSC aspirant.
So we're wrapping up our look at India's demographic shift.
But this is just the beginning.
Keep learning, keep questioning, and keep working towards a better future.
And hey, while you're at it, why not like and subscribe to this channel?
Share this episode with your fellow UPSC friends.
We'll be back soon with another deep dive into a topic that's sure to get you thinking.
Until then, best of luck with your studies.